The waitress stood frozen behind the counter, staring at the door she knew would close forever in less than 24 hours. In her pocket was a court order. Tomorrow morning, her 5-year-old daughter would be taken from her, not because she was a bad mother, not because she didn't love her child, but because she was poor, because her apartment was too small, because her life didn't fit inside the boxes the system demanded. That morning, as a social worker led her little girl away, she had whispered the only promise she knew how to make: "Mommy will fix this." But now, standing alone in a nearly empty diner on a Nebraska highway, she finally understood something terrifying. There was nothing left to fix unless a miracle happened, and miracles don't walk into diners, or so she thought. The fluorescent lights of the Silver Fork Diner hummed their tired song into the Nebraska night. Outside, beyond the streaked windows, Interstate 80 stretched like a dark river through cornfields, carrying travelers to destinations that mattered, to lives that made sense. Inside, the coffee was burnt, the pie was yesterday's, and Sarah Mitchell was dying inside. She stood behind the counter, hands trembling as they gripped the edge of the formica. The legal papers in her apron pocket felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. 24 hours. That's all she had left. 24 hours to produce stability, a safe home, and a support system she didn't have, or lose her daughter forever. The impossibility of it crushed the air from her lungs. Her reflection in the coffee pot showed a woman she barely recognized. 32 years old but looking 50, dark circles carved beneath eyes that had cried themselves dry. When had she become this ghost? That morning, she had promised Emma, her 5-year-old, through tears as the social worker led her away. "Mommy will fix this," Sarah had whispered. "Mommy always fixes things." But some things couldn't be fixed with duct tape and determination. Some things required miracles, and Sarah had stopped believing in miracles a long time ago. The lunch rush had ended hours ago, leaving the diner in that strange quiet between shifts. Sarah moved through her tasks on autopilot, wiping tables that were already clean, refilling salt shakers that didn't need refilling, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from falling apart. Her phone buzzed. A message from her sister in California. "I told you this would happen. You should have listened." Sarah deleted it without answering. Jessica had made her view clear years ago. Keep the baby or keep your freedom, but you can't have both. Sarah had chosen Emma, and ever since then she'd been paying for that choice with exhaustion. "More coffee, miss?" Sarah blinked. She'd been standing beside table 7, pot in hand, frozen in place. The only customer still in the dining area, a man in his late 30s with kind eyes and a worn leather jacket, looked up at her with concern. "I'm sorry," she stammered, moving to pour. Her hands shook. Coffee splashed onto the saucer. "Hey, it's okay," he said gently. "Rough day." Sarah tried to laugh, but it came out sharp and wrong. "You could say that." She glanced toward the booth near the window where his daughter sat, coloring carefully. The girl, 8 years old maybe, had the same dark hair as her father, pulled into a ponytail that was slowly falling apart. Something about the scene, the way he leaned in to listen when the girl spoke, the way he'd cut her food earlier with patient hands, made Sarah's chest ache. That's what a real parent looked like. Someone who had their life together, someone who wouldn't lose their child to a system that measured love in bank statements and square footage. "Thank you," Sarah managed, setting the pot down quickly before she spilled more. "Let me know if you need anything else." She retreated into the kitchen and pressed her back against the walk-in freezer door. The cold metal seeped through her thin uniform. October in Nebraska meant the temperature was dropping, and she already had the eviction notice taped to her apartment door. Her studio above the liquor store, with a leaking ceiling and a heater that barely worked, had been barely acceptable to Child Protective Services. Now it would be neither acceptable nor hers. She pulled the court paper from her pocket again. The words hadn't changed, no matter how many times she read them. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. If she couldn't prove stable housing, adequate income, and a support system, Emma would go into foster care. Sarah had called everyone she could think of. Shelters were full. Employers weren't hiring. The pro bono attorney had been honest. Unless you can show immediate, dramatic improvement, there's little I can do. And the social worker, Linda Hartwell, had been tired, but not unkind. Sarah, Linda had said, I've given you 6 months. You're working 16-hour days. Emma is alone too much. The system isn't trying to hurt you, it's trying to protect her. The system is trying to take my daughter, Sarah had snapped. The system is trying to make sure she's safe. There's a difference. But to Sarah, there wasn't. Not when the end result was Emma crying, "Mommy!" as she was led away. The kitchen door swung open. Dolores, the evening cook, peeked in. "You okay, mija? You look like you're about to pass out." "I'm fine," Sarah lied, stuffing the paper away. Dolores didn't believe her, but she didn't push. "Table 7 needs his check," Dolores said. Then, softer, "Whatever it is, it's going to be okay. God doesn't give us more than we can handle." Sarah wanted to scream that God had clearly miscalculated, but she only nodded and walked back out. The diner had grown darker, shadows stretching across worn linoleum. As Sarah approached the table, she heard the little girl chattering excitedly, "And in my book, the princess gets rescued by a dragon instead of a prince, because the dragon was actually the good guy and the prince was kind of mean. And the story is about how you can't judge people by what they look like." "Slow down, Lily," her father laughed. "Breathe." "But Daddy, it's important. Don't you think that's a really good message?" "I think it's an excellent message." Sarah set the check on the table. "Whenever you're ready." The man looked up again. "Are you sure you're okay? You look like—" He stopped himself. "I'm sorry. Not my business." "I'm fine," Sarah said automatically, turning away. But she wasn't fine. She was the opposite of fine. And as she reached the counter, something inside her finally broke. It started as tightness in her chest, then rose to her throat, choking off air. The diner tilted, her knees buckled. She grabbed for the counter and missed. And then she was sobbing, huge, gasping sobs she couldn't control, right there in the open, in front of God and the fluorescent lights and a nearly empty restaurant. "Please," she whispered into her hands, "please, I need help. I need a miracle. I can't do this anymore." She wasn't even sure who she was talking to. God, the universe, anyone. "Please," she whispered again. "I'm a good mother. I love her so much. Please don't take her from me." Dolores was there in an instant, arms around her shoulders, murmuring in Spanish, "Cálmate, mija. It's okay. Let it out." But it wasn't okay. And in less than 18 hours, unless a miracle fell from the sky, Sarah would lose the only thing in this world that mattered. Somewhere behind her, she heard a chair scrape. Footsteps. A man's voice, quiet and serious. "Ma'am, excuse me. I think I might be able to help." Sarah looked up through tears that blurred the world into watercolors. The man from table 7 stood a few feet away, his daughter holding his hand. Both of them watched her with the same concerned expression. "I'm sorry," Sarah choked, trying to stand. "I'm so sorry. This is unprofessional." "Don't apologize," the man said. He crouched so he was eye level with her. Up close, Sarah noticed silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. "My name is David Chen," he said. "This is my daughter, Lily, and I think you're in serious trouble." Sarah let out a bitter little laugh. "That's one way to put it. Can I ask what kind of trouble?" She shook her head. "You don't want to know." "Try me," David said. "I'm a pretty good listener." Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that tomorrow could take everything from her anyway. Or maybe it was something in his eyes, something that looked like he understood what rock bottom felt like. Sarah found herself talking. She told him about Emma, about the pregnancy at 27, and the boyfriend who vanished before the test was dry, about working 3 jobs and still falling behind, about medical bills, about the first 5 years, the beautiful, brutal years, where Emma's "I love you, Mommy" was the only thing that made the world feel worth it. She told him about the eviction notice, about the job searches that went nowhere, about school calling because Emma's clothes weren't right, because she fell asleep in class, because Sarah couldn't be in 2 places at once. She told him about CPS, about 6 months of trying to meet standards that felt impossible. And finally, she told him about the hearing. 9 a.m. "Tomorrow," she said, voice hollow. "If I can't prove stable housing, adequate income and support, they're taking her." David was silent a long moment. Then he asked carefully, "What would stability look like in the court's eyes?" Sarah handed him the crumpled paper. He read it, jaw tightening. "They want a safe home," he said slowly, "and a support structure. Ideally, 2 parents or strong family support." Sarah gave a humorless laugh. "Right, so they want me to be someone else." David folded the paper and gave it back. Then he walked to Lily and spoke quietly with her. Sarah couldn't hear the words, but she saw Lily's eyes go wide. Then she nodded, serious as an adult. David returned and sat down beside Sarah like they were 2 people discussing weather, not the impossible. "Here's what I'm thinking," he said calmly. "You need a husband and a stable home by tomorrow morning. I have a 3-bedroom house in Kearney, mortgage paid off, spare room that's mostly boxes." Sarah stared at him. "What?" "My daughter is 8, David said. "Her mother died 3 years ago. We've been on our own since then. We're okay, but the house gets too quiet, too empty." He met Sarah's eyes. "I'm a high school English teacher, steady income, benefits. I'm boring and reliable." Sarah couldn't even breathe. "Are you suggesting—" "A marriage of convenience," David said. "Platonic. You and Emma move in. We present as a blended family. You get time to stabilize. Once you're back on your feet, we quietly dissolve it." Sarah shook her head, stunned. "You don't even know me." "I know you're a mother fighting for her daughter," David said. "And I know what it's like to feel helpless when someone you love is being taken from you." Sarah swallowed hard. "Why? What do you get out of it?" David glanced toward Lily, who was pretending to color but clearly listening. "My daughter asked me last week why we don't help people more," he said softly. "She said, 'How do strangers become not strangers if you never give them a chance?'" Sarah blinked. "She's 8. David's smile was small. "And she's smarter than I am." Sarah's mind screamed that this was insane, but Emma's face rose in her memory, confused, scared, reaching for her. "Mommy, when can I come home?" Sarah's throat tightened. "Daddy!" Lily called softly. "Is the lady going to be okay?" David looked at Sarah with something that surprised her. "Hope. I think she might be," he said, "if she lets us help." Sarah took a shaking breath, then another, and before she could talk herself out of it, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. What do we do?" They moved to a booth, all three of them leaning in like they were planning a heist. David pulled out a notebook and started making lists. Sarah realized he was a list person, organized, methodical, the kind of person CPS would love. "First," David said, "we need to show stability, evidence, a timeline, proof that this isn't something invented overnight." "In less than 12 hours, Sarah said. "In less than 12 hours, David agreed. "Which means we get smart." He asked Lily questions, prompting her memory of places they'd been, community events, school functions, the state fair, anything that could be framed as overlap. Dolores appeared with coffee and pie and set it down without asking. "On the house," she said, "you're going to need the energy." She looked at David. "You really doing this, mijo?" "I am." Dolores shook her head, half smiling. "You're either the best person I've ever met or the craziest." "Probably both," David said. They made calls. David called his lawyer, Patricia Wu, and explained the situation carefully. Patricia sounded skeptical, then quiet, then resigned. "This is either brilliant or it's going to explode," she said. "But if you're doing this, I'm in. I'll draft emergency paperwork and meet you in the morning." Sarah called Linda Hartwell. "I need to see Emma tonight," Sarah said. "Just 1 hour. Please, I need to tell her good night." There was silence. Then Linda sighed. 1 hour, 7 p.m. at the family center. "But Sarah, tomorrow happens no matter what. Don't make promises you can't keep." "I won't," Sarah lied, because she had to. At the family center, Emma was waiting with her worn, stuffed rabbit. The moment she saw Sarah, she ran. "Mommy?" Sarah dropped to her knees and caught her daughter in a fierce hug, breathing her in like oxygen. "I want to come home," Emma whispered into her shoulder. "Why can't I come home?" "You will," Sarah promised. "Tomorrow, you're coming home." Emma pulled back, hope blooming on her face. "Really? Really?" Sarah smoothed her hair. "But I want you to meet 2 people." Lily stepped forward cautiously and waved. "Hi," Lily said. "I'm Lily. I'm 8. How old are you?" 5, Emma said shyly. "Do you like animals?" Lily asked. Emma nodded. "Me too. I have a hamster named Mr. Whiskers. Want to see pictures?" And just like that, the girls were sitting on the floor together, giggling softly over photos. Sarah and David spoke to Linda a few steps away. Sarah introduced him as her fiancé, then said the words that tasted unreal. "We're getting married," Sarah said. "Before tomorrow." Linda said flatly, "Yes." Linda's eyes narrowed. "I'll need documentation, proof. If this is a sham, it will make things worse." David's voice stayed steady. "We'll bring everything to the hearing. My lawyer will be there." Linda didn't look convinced, but she looked at Emma, quietly leaning into Lily's side like she already felt safer. "I want what's best for Emma," Linda said. "If your situation is stable, I'll recommend she stays with you." They drove west that night. The girls fell asleep in the back seat, their heads leaning toward each other. Sarah stared out the window at the dark fields and tried not to think about how close she was to losing everything. David's house was neat and warm and painfully normal, the kind of home Sarah had only seen on TV. Lily had left a drawing on the guest room nightstand that said, in messy crayon letters, "Welcome, Emma." Sarah's chest cracked open. After Emma was tucked in, Sarah found David making tea in the kitchen, like this was an ordinary night. "It needs to look lived in," David said gently, "like you belong here." They staged the small things. Sarah's toiletries went into the bathroom, her clothes into a dresser. Photos taken on David's phone became family moments. Patricia arrived close to midnight, eyes sharp, scanning everything with a lawyer's skepticism. She asked questions designed to trip them up. What was the first date? Where did he propose? What did Sarah think the first time she met Lily? They stumbled just enough to sound human. Patricia nodded. Good. Perfection would look fake. Then she leaned in. "Tomorrow, keep answers short. Don't volunteer, and for the love of God, look like a couple." After Patricia left, Sarah and David sat in the dark living room, too wired to sleep. Sarah finally asked the question that wouldn't leave her alone. "Why are you really doing this?" David was quiet. Then he said, "When my wife was dying, we had to fight the insurance company for every treatment. We had the right things: money, insurance, paperwork, and it still wasn't enough." His voice tightened. "The system doesn't care what you need. It cares what it thinks you need." Sarah whispered, "I'm sorry." "Don't be," David said. "It taught me that sometimes the right thing is to fight the system, not obey it." He hesitated. "And this house has been too quiet for too long." Sarah reached for his hand in the darkness, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a plan. It felt like a lifeline. At dawn, they drove toward the courthouse. Sarah wore the nicest outfit she owned. David wore a suit that made him look like exactly what the court wanted to see. Lily and Emma stayed with David's neighbor, Mrs. Parker, who smiled warmly and asked no questions. In the courtroom, Judge Rachel Morrison looked over her glasses. Patricia introduced herself, then announced the marriage. The judge's eyebrows rose. "Last night?" "Yes, Your Honor," Patricia said smoothly. "Given the urgency, they accelerated their plans." "How convenient," the judge said dryly. Linda presented her report. Then the judge questioned David. She questioned Sarah. She questioned the timing. She questioned the truth. Sarah's stomach turned into ice. Then David spoke, and the room shifted. He didn't insult anyone. He didn't grandstand. But he said something simple, steady, and undeniable. Emma wasn't unsafe because Sarah didn't love her. Emma was unsafe because poverty had made everything harder, and love didn't show up on a form. When the judge asked Sarah what would happen if the marriage didn't work, Sarah answered honestly, without admitting the lie. "Then I'll have had time," Sarah said, voice shaking. "Time to stabilize. Time to build what you want to see. He's giving me time to do it right." Linda's recommendation was cautious but supportive. The judge sat silently for a long moment. Then she set her papers down. "I'm returning Emma to her mother's custody," she said. "Effective immediately." Sarah's breath caught. "But," the judge continued, "I'm ordering monthly check-ins for 6 months. If this arrangement is unstable or deceptive, we reconvene, and I will not be lenient. Am I clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Sarah and David said together. The gavel struck. Sarah felt like her soul re-entered her body. Emma came home that afternoon. In the car, she clutched her stuffed rabbit and stared out the window like she didn't trust happiness yet. "We're going to David and Lily's house," Sarah said softly. "That's home now." "Forever?" Emma asked. "For a long time," Sarah said. "Is that okay?" Emma nodded slowly. Lily's nice. When they pulled into the driveway, Lily burst onto the porch like fireworks. "Come on!" she squealed, grabbing Emma's hand. "We made your room pretty. And we're having pizza because that's what you eat when someone comes home." The girls ran inside. Sarah and David stood in the driveway, stunned by the ordinary miracle of it. "Stop thanking me," David said gently. "Family doesn't keep score." But in the quiet weeks that followed, Sarah wrestled with the truth. They were strangers playing dress-up. Sooner or later, someone would see through it. And yet, life began to stabilize. Sarah found a job in Kearney doing data entry at a bank. 40 hours, benefits, a ladder she could actually climb. She picked Emma up from school most days. She bought her daughter clothes that fit the weather. She slept for the first time without waking up choking on panic. Linda Hartwell came for monthly check-ins. Each time, she looked a little less suspicious. The house was clean. The girls were thriving. Emma laughed more. Her teachers sent good reports home. One day, after the third visit, Linda said quietly, "You're doing well." Then she hesitated. "And whether this started suspiciously or not, what I see now is a child doing better." Sarah didn't argue. She just nodded, letting the truth sit where it sat. Because the strangest part was this: somewhere along the way, pretending started to feel less like pretending. David taught Emma to ride a bike in the driveway, running beside her with one hand on the seat, laughing like he'd forgotten how. Sarah helped Lily with math homework at the kitchen table. Movie nights became routine, blankets on the couch. The girls squeezed between them, hands accidentally touching, not for show, just because. One night, after the girls went to bed, Sarah and David stood in the kitchen, washing dishes. "This is nice," David said quietly. "It is," Sarah admitted. "I didn't expect it to feel normal," he said. "Right." Sarah dried a plate slowly. Her heart was doing something complicated. "David," she began. He turned off the water, facing her. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I just want you to know. Having you here made this house feel like a home again." Sarah swallowed. Then she said it. "I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air. David let out a slow breath, like he'd been holding it for months. "That's inconvenient," he said. Sarah laughed shakily. "Yeah, because this was supposed to be temporary," David said softly. "And if this becomes real, it gets complicated." "Complicated might be better than alone," Sarah whispered. David stepped closer. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, gentle, careful, like he was asking permission. "I'm falling in love with you too," he said. "I have been for a while." Sarah's eyes filled. "We're married," she whispered, a smile breaking through. "I think you're allowed." "It was supposed to be fake," David murmured. "Is it?" Sarah asked. "We live together. We raise our girls together. We built a life together. What part of that is fake?" David smiled, and it transformed his whole face. And then Sarah kissed him. Soft at first. A question. David answered it. When they pulled apart, Sarah let out a breathless laugh. "Well, that's new." "Good new or bad new?" David asked. "Definitely good new," she said. Upstairs, floorboards creaked. Two little shadows whispered and giggled behind a cracked bedroom door. 4 months after that first hearing, the phone call came. Sarah was at work when an unknown number flashed on her screen. She answered, and the voice on the other end made her blood run cold. "Miss Mitchell?" "This is Detective Frank Morrison with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. We need you to come down to the station. There's been a complaint filed regarding fraud in family court." The room tilted. Sarah's fingers went numb around the phone. She called Patricia, then David. "Someone reported us," she whispered. "They know." Patricia's face was grim when they met at her office. "This is serious," she said. "If they prove perjury, you could lose Emma permanently. David could lose Lily. There could be charges." David didn't flinch. "We tell the truth," he said. Patricia stared. "That's the fastest way to get punished." "Lying more won't save us," David said, "and I'm not going to pretend what we built isn't real." Sarah looked at him, then down at her hands. Then she nodded. "He's right," she whispered. "We tell the truth." The emergency hearing was set for the following week. Sarah spent every night holding Emma a little tighter. "Mommy," Emma said one night, small voice in the dark, "why are you sad?" "I'm not sad," Sarah lied. "Just tired." Emma sniffed. "You smell sad." Sarah laughed through tears. "What does sad smell like?" "Like rain," Emma said seriously, "and like you need a hug." So Sarah held her daughter and tried not to imagine losing her again. The courtroom was packed this time. A reporter sat in the back. Judge Morrison looked at them like she was tired of being disappointed. "I told you not to waste your second chance," she said. "We didn't, Your Honor," David said. "Please let us explain." Patricia presented the truth, the desperation, the impossible deadline, the decision made in fear, and then she presented what had happened since: Emma's improved grades, the stable home, Sarah's job, neighbors and teachers describing a real family, a home where both girls were safe. Judge Morrison called Sarah to the stand. "Did you lie to this court?" she asked. Sarah swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you understand that's serious?" "Yes." "Then why shouldn't I remove Emma from your custody immediately?" Sarah looked at Emma and Lily in the gallery, small hands held together, two little faces trying to be brave. "Because she's happy," Sarah said, voice breaking. "Because she's thriving. Because for the first time she feels safe." "And you'd break the law for that?" the judge asked. Sarah didn't look away. "Yes," she whispered, "because the law this time was wrong." The courtroom murmured. The judge banged her gavel for order. Then she called David. "You knew what you were doing," Judge Morrison said. "You're a teacher, an educated man." "Yes," David said, "and you did it anyway." "Yes," he said again, steady, "because I watched a good mother be treated like she wasn't good enough, and I couldn't live with that." The judge leaned back, studying them for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. "I do not reward dishonesty," she said, "and I don't make a habit of tolerating fraud in my courtroom." Sarah's stomach dropped. Then the judge looked down at Emma's records again. "And yet," she continued, "I also cannot ignore outcomes. I cannot ignore a child who is demonstrably doing better. I cannot ignore two adults who, however imperfectly they began, have created a stable and loving home." She set the papers down. "I should hold you in contempt," she said, "and maybe, in another case, I would." She paused, eyes moving to the gallery where Emma sat. "But I will not punish a child for the sins of adults when the child is safe, loved, and thriving." The room went silent. "I am ordering continued monitoring," Judge Morrison said, "strictly, and if this home becomes unstable, we reconvene immediately." Then her tone softened, just slightly. "And if you're going to claim you're a family, then act like one." She raised the gavel. Case dismissed. Sarah's knees nearly gave out. David squeezed her hand like he was holding her upright. That night, they went home to their daughters. And this time, nothing felt fake. 1 year later, they returned to the Silver Fork Diner. Same tired fluorescent lights, same worn linoleum, same smell of coffee and pie. But when Sarah walked in with David, Emma and Lily racing ahead to claim a booth, it felt different, like a place you survived, like sacred ground. Dolores looked up and her face split into a grin. "Mija, you brought the whole family!" They ordered pancakes for the girls, burgers for the adults, coffee all around. Emma and Lily colored together while they waited, heads bent close over the page. They drew their family, 4 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. And right beside them, they drew a small hamster with whiskers so big it looked like a mustache. "Mom," Emma asked, looking up, "can we get a dog?" Sarah smiled. "We'll talk about it." David laughed. "You're getting soft." "I can afford to be soft now," Sarah said. "We're safe." She looked around the diner, remembering the night she'd fallen apart, and whispered a desperate prayer. "Please, I need a miracle." She'd gotten one, not because her problems vanished overnight, but because someone heard her pain and stepped into it with her. Sometimes grace comes from the heavens, and sometimes it comes from a stranger sitting a few tables away, brave enough to offer help when help is needed most. Either way, it's still a miracle. This story is a reminder that kindness is not always convenient. Love is not always conventional, and family is not always what you expect. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is offer help to a stranger, and sometimes the wisest thing we can do is accept it. May we all be brave enough to be someone's miracle when the moment comes.